Okay, let's see if we're working or not. I know I do this every time. Give me a second. Refresh. Okay, looks like we're up and going. So welcome everyone. Today I'm going to talk to you all about high blood pressure and what is the root cause of it and how do you improve it naturally. And what all do you need to be concerned about when it comes to things like medications, weight loss, those kinds of things, and what you can do. So let's see here. I'm still not seeing myself now on Facebook. Let's see if it refreshes. Nothing like having to look for yourself on a channel. Um, let's see here. Yep, looks like I'm still live, so we are good. So anyway, so let's get into it, into the nitty gritty and just dive deep. Oh, and by the way, so if anybody who doesn't know who I am, my name is Lindsay Venn. I am a PA, a registered dietitian, as well as a metabolic health practitioner. And it is kind of my mission in life to help people heal themselves naturally as best as possible. You can find me at Venn Integrative Medicine or at Insulin IQ if you would like to work with me one-on-one. So let me share my screen. All right, 2 seconds. Here it comes. Okay. Oops, and I'm at the end of the slideshow, of course. So give me 2 seconds again. Let me go to the beginning. Start. Okay, so let's talk about the facts about blood pressure. Again, this is really important because people are told that it's just something that they're going to have and they have to deal with medications and there's nothing else that they can do about it. But I want to prove that otherwise here today. So again, you can find me at Venn Integrative Medicine or at Insulin IQ if you want to work with me one-on-one. And here's my disclaimer. This is not personalized medical advice. I am not your doctor. I'm here to give you advice about how to talk to your doctor and things to look for and some strategies that you can do to improve your blood pressure naturally. So let's talk about the definition of blood pressure first. So a normal blood pressure is anything that is considered to be less than 120 over 80. 120 is the systolic number, 80 is the diastolic number. And what that really is it's the amount of pressure your heart has to exert. The systolic is on contraction, how hard it has to squeeze in order to get the blood out. And the diastolic is how much does it relax between contractions. And so they measure two different things, but it's primarily the contraction strength and the ability to relax or vasodilate. Mild hypertension or high blood pressure is anything in the 130s systolic and anything still in the 80s diastolic. And then when they truly diagnose you with high blood pressure, it's anything that's greater than 140 over 90 on 2 subsequent tests. So some important things that a lot of people don't know, especially if you're checking your blood pressure at home. Make sure that you are sitting down for at least 10 minutes before you check your blood pressure. So if you run into the doctor's office and they hustle you back and you sit down and you're breathing hard and they check your blood pressure and it's high, it's probably because you didn't have that rest period. So make sure if you're doing it at home, sit down for at least 10 minutes before you check it. Make sure both of your feet are on the ground. They want your feet on the flat on the ground. And so it just helps if you have your legs crossed or, a foot up or something, that will also impact your blood pressure. Make sure that where your cuff is at, just above the elbow, is at the same level of the heart. So we want you to do this with a rest. So don't be holding it up here like this in order to do that. We want it to be rested on something where that cuff is at the same elevation of your heart. And this lady over here is doing that just perfectly. Make sure you have the proper cuff size. If you're a larger person and try to use a normal cuff and you're always getting these weird readings, maybe it's because the cuff is too small. On the other side, if you're a very small person and you have too big of a cuff, that can be a problem as well. And so make sure that you have the proper cuff size. Try to do it. This lady here is doing it wrong. Try to do it with a bare arm. So sometimes closed, bulky things can cause a false reading as well. It's harder for the machine or the person who's listening to you to actually be able to detect the heartbeat. And so make sure that you have a bare arm or at minimum a very lightweight sleeve on. And then when checking at home, I always recommend to not get obsessive about it. I have some patients who will check it like 5 or 6 times a day. If it comes back high, they'll sit down and check it 3 or 4 more times. Well, you're going to stress yourself out and your blood pressure is going to go up. So pick a time of day that works really well for you. Try to do around the same time every day, just so you get a consistent reading. You know, things like caffeine can impact it, stress can impact it, activity, that kind of thing. So make sure you're trying to do it once a day about the same time. So again, what happens at the doctor's office? Usually you have a stressful wait in the waiting room, which is frustrating. That's my biggest pet peeve, is waiting for hours, you know, or 30 plus minutes in a waiting room. That brings my blood pressure up. When you get brought back, make sure you do get to sit down at least for several minutes, if not the full 10. Make sure your arms at the right level. Make sure your feet are both on the ground. You know, if they say, oh no, you don't have to take off your sweater, if you can, take it off. And then be aware there is something called white coat syndrome, and it's a true legitimate thing where some people just get really nervous in the doctor's office. They may not feel like they're nervous, but their blood pressure will reflect it. And so that's why it's really, really important, if you're worried about your blood pressure, to check it at home. You know, for my patients that would used to come into the office, if they'd come in and always have a blood pressure, you know, 150s over 90s, but bring me a list and says, hey, this is what my blood pressure cuff at home reads, and I'm always in the 120s over 80s. Then we just negate the ones in the office and call it white coat syndrome. You will at some point want to check your cuff at home to the one at the doctor's office to make sure they're reading correctly as well. So that will further support your recorded blood pressures from home, is if you can bring in your cuff and actually say, here, doc, compare mine to yours. This record keeping I'm doing is accurate. So first, when you check at home, make sure you get a good upper arm cuff. I know they've got wrist ones and other ones out there. The upper arm cuffs are definitely the best. They're not that expensive. So I do recommend to get a good one that goes around the upper arm. Follow all the rules that I just talked about. At the beginning, check it a couple of different times. Make sure that you feel like you're getting an accurate reading, that the cuff is comfortable, all of that. Compare it with other people's. You know, if everybody's blood pressure is high in the house, maybe the cuff's wrong. If you're the only one who's high and everybody else is normal, then that's, you know, time to look into that a little bit more. It's not the cuff, it's probably you. And then again, like I said, keep a record for your doctor, especially as we start talking about, you know, reducing medications or making lifestyle change. You might see some changes, and that record's really, really helpful when you want to talk to your doctor about reducing meds. So what causes it? Well, we're going to talk about it. There's 2 things, in my opinion, that cause high blood pressure, and I should have added a third one here. A third one that I can add in here is chronic kidney disease. If your kidneys aren't functioning properly, you can get blood pressure issues from that. But the number one cause by far is insulin resistance, and I'll talk about how that happens and why that is. But the other one is what we call idiopathic hypertension, and I do have a couple of patients with this that no matter their efforts, they try really, really hard with the diet and the lifestyle and the stress management and all the things. They just can't get that blood pressure down, and they do need to be on medications. And so this is just some people. It's unfortunate and frustrating, but it is one of the things that can happen. So how does insulin resistance cause hypertension? So when I describe this to people, I oftentimes use a garden hose analogy. And so the analogy is this: you want to compare that garden hose to your vessels in your body. And so if these vessels are a garden hose, there's a couple of different scenarios that garden hose is going to experience. And so the first one would be like a frozen garden hose. If it's, you know, if you're back in Ohio or Michigan or Wisconsin right now, this is what your garden hose probably looks like. But what happens here is, if you think about it, if you were to try to unroll this garden hose right now or push some water through it, you're going to have a really hard time because there's no flexibility to the hose. That is very much what happens with insulin resistance, because when the lining of those vessel walls becomes insulin resistant, it can't expand and contract like it's supposed to. It tends to just be really, really stiff, just like this garden hose. And it also develops a thinning of the lining of the wall of the vessel because of that, where there's just less room for that blood or the water to get through when it comes to this garden hose. So that's the first piece. We've got stiff vessels. And this is what I was talking about, vasoconstriction versus vasodilation. High insulin leads to those insulin resistant cells. It also leads to less nitric oxide production, which also helps with vasodilation and vasoconstriction. And so this is the problem. So this is a nicely vasodilated vessel. This is a poorly dilated or constricted vessel where the volume, it compresses that volume. And volume matters. So here's the second piece. So if you have a regular garden hose with normal volume in here, meaning your blood flow and your blood volume is normal, then it looks like that. If you have too much volume going on and it looks like this, that increases pressure. When you have more volume trying to get through that hose, whether it be a tight hose or a flexible hose, if there's more volume, there's going to be more pressure. It's just like your hose. If you just put a little bit of water on, if you just turn it on a little bit, there isn't a whole lot of pressure. But if you turn that volume way up, the pressure coming out of the hose is significantly higher, and it's just like that in our body. And why does this work? And so when we have high insulin, we also have this high aldosterone. Aldosterone is a kidney hormone and an adrenal hormone that will signal to the kidney to retain water. So the higher the insulin, the higher the aldosterone, the more water you will retain, which is increasing your volume. And so if you have more volume, and because this is, all started with insulin resistance, so you're likely to have insulin resistant vessels, then you're going to have kind of a double whammy. And so here with this, I call it the perfect storm. You have reduced vasodilation, you have more volume, those are going to equal high blood pressure. And the ultimate obvious cause in 99% of people is they're insulin resistant. So what is typical treatment? If you come into the doctor's office for high blood pressure, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to give you a medication. And I put these in the order of what I learned in school. I did look it up a little bit ago, and that has changed a little bit. These two, the ACE inhibitor and the ARB, are now kind of the front line. And then addition of one of these others, particularly the hydrochlorothiazide and the calcium channel blocker, those are second line. Beta blocker is third line, and then they'll do combination meds. And so you can find all kinds of combinations. I'm going to talk about each of these and the pros and cons of them, so you'll have some ideas. So hydrochlorothiazide, back when I was in medical school, this was first line stuff. This is what you would put somebody on first because it had the least risk associated with it. So it's a diuretic. It's going to lower your volume by making you pee more. And so if you're peeing out more liquids, you're going to have less volume in the system, which will reduce blood pressure. There are problems with this. So we do have to pay attention to the kidneys. If we dry out the system too much, the kidneys suffer. And so we have to pay attention to kidneys with repeat lab work. And we also have, because it's a diuretic, when we're peeing out a lot, we will also be peeing out electrolytes, particularly potassium. And so making sure you're paying attention to your potassium levels, eating a diet that's rich in potassium, or even potentially taking potassium supplements might be needed in patients like this. ACE inhibitors. So these are angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors. And I'm not going to go into what angiotensin does, but it's another kidney function thing. Like I say here, it works at the level of the kidney. It is probably first line. Most people, this is what they're going to get when they go to the doctor with a new diagnosis of high blood pressure. And so most people get started on this. Lisinopril is probably the most common. I put a couple other names down here as well. Any of them that end in that PRIL tend to be the ACE inhibitors. So you can pay attention that way if you're not sure. A lot of doctors will also put people who have diabetes on this because they consider it to be kidney protective. There is a small function in this medication that can actually help the kidneys a little bit. In my opinion, if you have diabetes and normal blood pressure, I don't know that I would start this medication, but it has been known to be kidney protective. There is one very common side effect that a lot of people experience, and that's a chronic cough. And this is just this weird dry cough that people develop, and oftentimes can't figure out why they've got it. They're not sick. They feel fine. Why am I having this dry cough? Well, that could be the ACE inhibitor that you're on, and then they'll switch you to something else. And the thing that most people get switched to are what we call ARBs, so ARBs, which stands for angiotensin receptor blocker. And so this one also works at the level of the kidney, and very commonly is the next choice if someone doesn't tolerate the ACE inhibitor. Some examples of this would be like losartan or valsartan. anything that ends in that artan, and I spelled that wrong. Losartan is what it's supposed to be. Anyway, those are the common next ones that people will be placed on. Beta blockers. So beta blockers, and when I mentioned it earlier, these are now kind of last line, but I see them all the time, which is interesting. That's why, in my opinion, it was higher up on the list. I have at least half of my patients with high blood pressure that come to me are on a beta blocker. And so these are things like metoprolol or propranolol or any of these other ones that end in OLOL. There are 3 different generations of these kinds of drugs, and doctors will pick them based on what's going on with you. Just be aware there are 3 different generations. The way it works is it'll actually reduce your heart rate to lessen that cardiac effort. So we're getting less squeeze, which means less pressure in order to lower the blood pressure. The downside is the most common side effect I see is fatigue. You know, if you're trying to exercise or do something and your heart rate cannot elevate, it will lead to fatigue, poor exercise tolerance, worsening recovery, that kind of thing. They are known to be obesogenic, so they can cause you to gain weight, and they are known to lead to more insulin resistance. And so these are kind of one of those where when I'm looking at it, and I'll talk about it in a second, is if I'm taking somebody off of a blood pressure medication and they're on 2 or 3, this will be the first one that I would take off. Calcium channel blockers, these are next. These work very similarly to beta blockers. They don't allow as much calcium into the cell, and that way it cannot contract as hard. And so it too will lower heart rate and what we call cardiac output. It reduces the amount of squeeze that can happen. And some examples, amlodipine is probably the one I see the most, but things like diltiazem, nifedipine, and verapamil are also fairly common. Side effects of this, a big one is the peripheral edema. Again, if the heart can't squeeze as much, you end up having a little bit more edema potentially. It can also have headaches, dizziness, and fatigue associated with it. The fatigue, just like the beta blocker. If you can't elevate your heart rate, you're going to have problems with energy levels. And what are the combos? There are combos pretty much with any and every one of these. Some common ones would be like lisinopril or losartan with the HCTZ or the hydrochlorothiazide. That one's very common. I see it all of the time. Then there's also combinations with the calcium channel blockers as well as the ACEs or the ARBs. There's a variety of combinations well above and beyond this. I just wasn't going to bore you with the list. And so these combo meds are nice because you only have to take 1 pill. But the downside is when you start to try to come off of them, it might need to have a different strategy there. So let's get back to how to fix this naturally. So how do you reverse your insulin resistance and your blood pressure? So number 1, this is the mantra that we've got at Insulin IQ that I also use, is prioritize your protein. And what do I mean by prioritize your protein? For most people, I want you to get 1 gram of protein per pound of desired body weight. And so if you are 200 pounds and you want to weigh 150, we would use 150 grams of protein as your goal. And this should be a priority every day. Make sure you control your carbohydrates. For most people, I want you to have them less than 50 grams of total carbs, and I'm going to write total on here for you, per day. This is not net carbs. I do not want you to subtract the fiber unless it's coming from real food like vegetables or nuts. If it's coming from fake food like low carb tortillas or keto bread, you cannot subtract the carbs. And so I always just encourage people to count total carbs and keep them less than 50. Filling with fat and fiber. So we want you to use healthy fats here, and we want you to optimize your fiber as best as you can. Healthy fats are ones that occur in nature. So any kind of animal product, dairy, butter, of course, coconut oil is a natural one, olive oil, avocado oil. Those are natural, and they're just fine. If you're worried about heart health because of your blood pressure, don't worry about eating more fat. We want you to just make sure you're eating the right kinds of fat. And for the fiber piece, you can get this from your food. You can always add more vegetables, particularly the ones that you eat the skin on or that appear fibrous like celery. And then there's some alternatives that we'll get into in a minute. Fasting frequently. When I say fast frequently, I mean intermittent fasting. So doing something like a 16-8 or an 18-6 is ideal. And I have talked about this previously, but that means a fast from calories for 16 hours overnight, and then an 8-hour eating window during the day. We want you to move daily. Exercise is really important with blood pressure. You will watch blood pressure reduce very well with daily activity. And so make sure you're getting out and doing it daily. Stress levels, of course, are going to impact your blood pressure. Don't check your blood pressure when you're super stressed. Wait till you're a little bit more calm, but do what you can to reduce stress. I too have another video on that. And then getting inflammation down will be very helpful. One thing I left off of here that I shouldn't have left off of here is weight loss. And so if you're losing weight, your blood pressure will come down. And so that's a nice piece about it, because reversing insulin resistance 9 times out of 10 will lead to weight loss. And so you get a double bang for your buck, because you'll get both the benefits of the insulin lowering strategies and the lowering of the insulin resistance, as well as the benefits of the weight loss when it comes to blood pressure. So some tools to help. So I'm going to go over these in detail as well, but the ones I most commonly use are listed here. So magnesium, L-arginine, the Feel Great system, and omega-3s can be quite helpful. And then I'm going to go over each one. So when it comes to magnesium, magnesium is a smooth muscle relaxer. And smooth muscles are the things in our body that we cannot control. So if you think about it, we can't flex our stomach, we can't flex our heart, we can't flex, our intestinal wall, things like that. So magnesium helps to relax those smooth muscles, which will lead to more vasodilation versus when you don't have magnesium on board. There's 3 different ones, or 4 different ones, I guess I have listed here. So magnesium glycinate, and all of these are equally effective for blood pressure, so it's just fine. You want to pick the one that's going to benefit you or not harm you, depending on what you're using it for. So if you also have muscle cramps and you have normal bowels and you don't want to lead to looser bowels, magnesium glycinate is my go-to. That's the one I use, and that's the one I recommend to most people. The 3-in-8 form of this is better for your brain. The glycinate's good for your brain too, but the 3-in-8 is a little bit more brain specific. And so any kind of brain health, it too is also easy on the bowels. Magnesium citrate, this is for those of you that have constipation. Again, it will lead to looser stools or more frequent stooling. And so if you have that issue, citrate's the way I would go. And then they also have combination ones out there. And so they'll have a combination of the 3 of these, or some others that might be magnesium oxalate, is the other one that might be incorporated in a combo, and they're all good. So again, it leads to more vasodilation, which will lower blood pressure, and the recommended starting point is about 400 milligrams per day, and then you can titrate that up or down depending on how things like your bowels are going. For most people, it works actually pretty well to just incorporate some magnesium. L-arginine is another supplement that I recommend. This one too is a smooth muscle relaxer. It will help with vasodilation, but it also helps with nitric oxide production. And so this is great because nitric oxide works in the body to promote more vasodilation. And so this one just, again, helps those vessels relax. The recommended dose on this is 700 to 1,000 milligrams twice a day. And most pills will come in somewhere in that dose and somewhere in the 700 to 1,000. So just 1 pill twice daily. I do put on here to caution with things like Viagra, just because those medications for erectile dysfunction also increase nitric oxide. And so if you were to do a combination of L-arginine as well as your Viagra, you might experience actually some low blood pressures, which could be a problem. So the Feel Great system, this one is great. You guys have heard me talk about it before. It is very, very powerful at lowering insulin resistance in general. It incorporates in the protocol that you need to do some intermittent fasting, which is something that I already recommended. It's going to boost the hormone GLP-1, which is a great hormone in the body that will improve insulin sensitivity, therefore lowering insulin resistance. It also makes the diet piece easier because you're not going to feel as hungry. You're going to calm down that food noise. You're going to feel full a little bit longer. The balance part of it, the fiber part of it, is going to help with improving the microbiome. And the microbiome is a whole nother thing we'll have to deep dive into one day, but adding more soluble and insoluble fiber, which is what balance is, can really improve your gut microbiome. And the best part about this, and I talk about it all the time, is this 90-day money back guarantee. If you try it for 90 days and your blood pressure doesn't get better, call the company, they'll give you your money back. And so, what do you have to lose? You either lose your blood pressure medications or you get your money back. And so I think it's a pretty good strategy. And then last is omega-3s. Omega-3s are one of the only supplements out there where you absolutely have to have a good brand. If you get a bad brand, something that's not been well temperature regulated, something that, is just not a good quality, you're better off not taking it than taking a bad one. And so you do have to have a good brand. They are pricey, I do know that, but they're very, very helpful when it comes to heart health. And so I recommend 2,000 to 4,000 milligrams a day. It's going to help lower inflammation. Some of these things, particularly insulin resistance, are driven by inflammation, and omega-3s are a very powerful anti-inflammatory. So a good strategy to go, especially if you're not eating a lot of cold water fish and things like that. Adding in an omega-3 can be very helpful. So if you want, I did put together on my Fullscripts page a link, and I'll share this link in the chat when I'm done. So if you want my recommended brands of these supplements, the magnesium, the arginine, the omega-3s, you're more than welcome to get into there and order them. So I'll put it in the chat when we're done today. So what about medication concerns if we're going to start doing these lifestyle changes? Because not everybody, but the vast majority of people, once they start doing the diet, doing the fasting, maybe incorporating the Feel Great and the supplements, what do? Well, number one, you must check your blood pressure at home daily. And I do mean daily. Every day, I want you to check it, preferably at the same time every day, because you're going to watch this decrease, and it can decrease very, very quickly, which is really cool. I mean, people who start on a low carb diet, prioritizing their protein with some intermittent fasting, their blood pressure can become normal within just a matter of days to weeks. And so really keep an eye on it, especially if you're having symptoms of orthostatic hypotension, which is that whole when you get up too fast, you feel like you're going to faint. If you notice any of that, go sit down, check your blood pressure. If your blood pressure is less than the 130/90, you really probably should consider reducing your blood pressure medications. Even if you're consistently, 138, 134, something like that, you might be considering a reduction there as well. When you're going to start reducing medications, obviously you have to work with your doctor on this. I'm not telling you what to do because I don't know you personally, but what my recommendation is to start with the beta blockers or the calcium channel blockers first, in hopes of getting those energy levels up as some of those other negative side effects. You can, so if you're on a high dose, you can start by reducing the dose. Some of these you can cut in half, do it that way. Or if you're on 2 medications, then you can stop one of them, again, daily checking your blood pressure, making sure it doesn't go up. If it goes up after stopping it, you need to get back on it for a little bit longer. But again, you must check it daily if you want to consider coming off of these. And again, keep record for your doctor, because your doctor is not going to be trained in de-prescription. They're only trained in prescribing. And so if you have the record that says, hey, look, I started this diet and my blood pressure has just continued to go down and down and down. Now I'm in the 120s over 80s all the time. What do you think about taking me off one of my meds? And hopefully they'll listen to you and support you. What about salt? I get this one all the time. We get this one all the time. Back in the day, we were taught, as a dietitian, I was always taught, if somebody has high blood pressure, they need to keep their sodium to less than 2,000 milligrams per day. Of course, I've learned otherwise. And so really, this does not matter. It is not a concern for most of us. Some people are salt sensitive. We all know that. There's a handful of people out there who are salt sensitive, but the vast majority of people are not. And so salt really isn't necessarily a concern. If you're on something like hydrochlorothiazide or spironolactone, you actually might need more salt because you're reducing that volume so much that we want to actually work to retain a little bit of it. This is something we work on case by case with people. But overall, the vast majority of people don't worry about the salt. I'd actually encourage more in most cases. But if you can trend it, if you can find that you seem salt sensitive and after a salty meal, your blood pressure goes up, you might be one of those rare individuals. If you want to learn more about it, this book is fantastic. It's by James DiNicolatino, called The Salt Fix, and it goes through all the data that's out there when it comes to salt and why it's good and healthy for us, and how it actually helps with things like insulin resistance more so than hurts it. So the takeaway, this is a quick one today. We like it. The takeaway from this, you can reverse the causes of hypertension, and you can reverse insulin resistance very easily. Again, dietary and supplement strategies are very, very helpful. I do recommend them. We compare it to using training wheels when you're learning to ride a bike. Well, these are your training wheels. The other tools that we've got, use them. You don't have to necessarily use them forever, but use them while you're transitioning to make that transition go a little bit better. And of course, you can always use me in a consult if you need more guidance when it comes to how do you reverse your hypertension and how do you potentially come off of or avoid medication use. So I hope this was helpful. Let me stop sharing my screen and check the chat, and we'll see if anybody has any questions on this. Let's see here. Facebook. Oops, that's not it. It's always hard to find on here. Oh, there it is. Oh, maybe not. All right, people, sorry about this. If you guys have chatted me, I can't seem to find you all. But let me see if I can. Oh, there it is. Okay. Lisa says, thank you. You're welcome, Lisa. Thank you for supporting me. That's Lisa Gent. Lisa Efnor says hello. Linda Tedros says hi, everyone. So perfect. Not too many comments. It says there's 5, but I only see 4. Oh, Tammy asks, what's a good fasting insulin? A good fasting insulin is less than 6, particularly if your blood sugars are normal. If your insulin is less than 6 and your blood sugars are high, then that's a whole different kind of problem. But ideally, we want to keep insulin between 2 and 6 from dietary interventions. So good question, Tammy. And hi. Anyone else? This is good. I had a crazy Monday and I was traveling yesterday, so I'm a little bit pooped, but always happy to do these. Linda says, thank you. This was great. I hope it was. I never talk about blood pressure like I should. And so I'm glad that this came to mind. And I thought, oh, this will be a good topic for the next one. I'm probably going to be going live in the mornings now, just doing like Q&A type of stuff. So pay attention, 9 o'clock Mountain Time. I'm going to be trying to get those in, though I think I have another meeting tomorrow, so it may not be tomorrow. But moving forward, 9 o'clock Mountain Time, find me on Facebook, and we will be doing just a very brief topic and then some Q&A. So, and let your friends know, spread the word. So awesome. Hi, Judy. Judy says, great presentation. Thank you. Ellen, I was thinking of you. Robin says, very informative. I'm on hydrochlorothiazide, irbesartan, and carvedilol. Anyone else? Maybe I should drop the. Oh, sorry, Robin. I assume you mean the carvedilol. My blood pressure. Yeah, if you're down to 117/70 most of the time, and she's on the protocol, which is the Feel Great system, so another good story to tell. Yeah, I would be picking one. Again, don't do this outside of your doctor. I am not your doctor, but yeah, pick one of those to try cutting back on or reducing, but while checking your blood pressure daily. Most of my patients, when we start to reduce blood pressure medication, their blood pressure, let's say they start out like you at 117/70, they'll stop a med and their blood pressure is 117/70. And it's like, well, that wasn't doing very much. They'll stop the next one. They're still at that 120/70 range. And it just seems like once the insulin resistance is healed, the body doesn't rely on those medications as much. I definitely would not stop all of them at the same time, and definitely make sure that you are checking that blood pressure daily. You do not, and I should have said it earlier, I said it in my video this morning, you do not want to run around with high blood pressure. Even if it requires being on a medication, that is better than running around with high blood pressure all the time. We do not want to create heart disease or a stroke or something along those lines. Ellen says, I'm your obsessive BB person, but now I'm terrified to even take my blood pressure. I know. And that's the hard part, because that stress is going to make it worse. And so take a deep breath, maybe go with the flow for a little while, and then maybe try again once it's not so in your face, like I know it has been for you, Ellen. We're trying. We'll keep trying. That's the good news about what I do, and you know it, is we'll just keep trying as many things as we can. So awesome. Okay, everyone, I'm going to let you go. Have a fantastic night, and hopefully I'll catch you at 9 o'clock. And I will be doing some other kind of big deep dive like this next week for sure, and every week moving forward, now that I'm one less job on my plate.